The manhwa begins with him looking at her with pleading eyes. He just needs her to confirm that Yena is their daughter. She sees his pain, even though she's the one who's been holding everything together. She wonders why he's so desperate, and what has caused him such distress. She knows she has to say it for him. Taking a deep breath, she tells him Yena is their child. 7 years ago, Lee Jung stares at the positive pregnancy test, disbelief washing over her. She went out drinking yesterday, and now this. Alcohol seems like the least of her problems. She tries to stay calm, wondering how things went so wrong. Oppa would never do something like this, so what now? Should she ask him to take her to the hospital? What if he gets angry? Then she thinks, how could he be mad when it's his fault? Blaming Jung Jihun, she realizes it's almost time for their date. Still in shock, she hurries to get ready. She sees him, Jung Jihun, her boyfriend. Why are you dressed like that? He asks. They've been dating for 6 months now and first met 8 months ago. Flashback to how Lee and Jung met. One day, while staying in Australia on a working holiday visa, Lee was crying in front of a Korean grocery store because she hadn't eaten in 2 days. Jung Jihun saw her and, without hesitation, lent her money when she told him she was starving. From that moment, he was such a kind man. He was caring and reliable, always protecting her. He still seems perfect even to this day. But now she wonders, was he as perfect with contraception? Were all their passionate moments really safe? He covers her with his jacket and tells her it suits her. He suggests going out to eat, but she declines, feeling nauseous. He notices her discomfort and insists on taking her home. He tells her to hurry back inside, but she suggests he come in with her. He insists she looks tired and should rest, but she feels energetic and says she needs to finish some work at home. Someone calls her name, and it turns out to be Sunbae. They chat briefly, with Sunbae wondering why she hasn't been in touch for a month despite being neighbors. Sunbae guesses it's because of dates and then says goodbye, leaving her to respond with a quick farewell. He tells her that Sunbae is from the same department and lives nearby. Jung Jihun says they should go upstairs, and although she questions his change of plans, she's relieved. She thinks about telling him something important, but worries he might misunderstand. Jung Jihun comments that Lee Jung is too pretty and that it's troublesome. Lee Jung reassures him, saying he's even prettier. Jung Jihun argues that she's more beautiful and starts kissing her, saying he'll warm her up since it's cold. She asks him to wait, because she has something important to tell him. He tells her that if she has something to say, she should just say it. She admits she's actually hungry. He says he wondered why she skipped meals and suggests they eat. He asks what they should cook, and she mentions she only has kimchi at home. He says that's fine and suggests making kimchi pancakes. She agrees. He heads to the kitchen to start cooking. She watches him and thinks that no matter how many times she sees him cook, she's always impressed. When the food is ready, he serves it and tells her to dig in. While she eats, he tells her to eat more. She responds that she's already had plenty and wonders how she could finish it all alone. A few minutes later, the plate is empty. She tells him it was as delicious as she expected. He asks how she's feeling, and she says she feels better, thinking to herself that she'll tell him everything once things are sorted out. She's sure he'll understand. He says he has to leave now, and she asks why he has to go so soon. He explains he still has work to do and starts cleaning up the kitchen. As he does, he notices the pregnancy test kit. She tries to distract him by handing him his jacket, but he walks over to the drawer and looks inside. He sees the pregnancy test kit among other items and asks what it is. She doesn't answer and starts crying. He tells her not to worry and suggests they take a moment to calm down. He reassures her that everything will be okay, and says he will call her later before leaving. It's the middle of the night, and her phone starts ringing. She picks it up groggily. He asks if she's asleep, and she says no. He then asks if she put a tangerine in his pocket. She says yes and tells him he should eat it. He thanks her and calls her name. She responds, and he tells her they need to go to the hospital together. She's surprised and asks why. He explains they need to get a maternity notebook, and that he heard hospitals give them out. She starts crying, saying she thought he'd hate this news. He asks why she thinks that and apologizes. He then asks if she's free tomorrow so they can meet, talk, and go to the hospital together. She agrees. He calls her name again, and she answers. He wants to tell her he loves her, but he decides against it. Instead, he says good night and hangs up. He thinks to himself that he needs to do this tomorrow. It might seem sudden, but the proposal has to be perfect. They always used birth control, except for maybe one time, which was a mistake. But now things are how they are. He wants to get married quickly. He promises not to ruin her dreams and to be a better person for her. He looks at the engagement ring and admits that he loves her. The next day, she sends him a text. He smiles when he sees it and tells himself he needs to stop by the florist. He plans to leave at 2 p.m. Then his phone rings. It's his mom. She answers and greets him. She asks if he's busy. He says he's a bit busy. She then asks why he showed up yesterday without talking to her. He apologizes and says he's really busy. She complains that he's always busy and mentions that she went home, played with his father, and had dinner. He says he understands and asks if everything is all right. She says nothing bad happened to her, but someone threw an egg at his brother's car a few days ago. She adds that there are some weird people out there and tells him to be careful. He tells her not to worry about him. He says he'll come by to pick it up soon, and that he wants to introduce her to someone. She asks who, but he just says he'll call her back and ends the call. He picks up the engagement ring and starts imagining how beautiful their child would be if they looked like her. He pictures letting their child take their first steps on fresh, overnight snow. He promises to teach them how to ride a bike, hold their hand, and tell them he loves them. As he steps out of the elevator, he checks the time to make sure he's not late. Suddenly, he sees a bright light from a car coming towards him. The car hits him, and the driver quickly gets out, looks at him, and then jumps back into the car and drives away. He screams for help, thinking about Lee and wondering how she will feel. He wishes for a happy life with her and worries if she would give up their child because of what's happening. He knows it's hard to raise a child alone and admits to himself that he loves her. He regrets not telling her that before. Jihun's mom is at the hospital, and a woman is comforting her. Jihun's mom keeps asking how this could happen to her son. Just then, the police arrive. One of the officers says they are from Yongsan police station, and asks if anyone is Jihun's mother. He explains that there was a problem with the building's CCTV, so they don't have any clues from that, but they managed to get the suspect's car license plate from the black box in the vehicle. They also have a recording of the hit-and-run accident, so they know who the suspect is. Jihun's mother pleads with the officer to catch the person responsible. The officer tells her the suspect's name is Kim Jin-gu and asks if she knows him. A young woman walks up and asks if he's the detective. She says she's a witness to the accident. She explains that she was moving into an office today, and went to the parking lot for a moment. That's when she saw the hit and run. She introduces herself to Jihun's mom as a newbie, Jinhoo's friend and Chai Uniop's sister. She asks if Jihun's mom remembers her. She adds that she studied abroad in the US, and recently transferred to Jihun's university. She just came back today. Jihun's mother asks if she's a newbie, and what she should do now. Inubai reassures her, saying not to worry. She tells her that Jihun's surgery will go well. Inubai says she'll go to the police station and then come back to the hospital, but Jihun's mother should go home for now. Inubai will wait and let her know when the surgery is over. Inubai heads to the police station and tells them that the suspect is a man wearing black clothes and a black hat, about 180 centimeters tall, with a husky voice. One of the officers says they have Kim Jin-gu there and starts dragging a man into the room. Inubai immediately shouts that it's the man. The man asks what she's talking about and why she's accusing him. Inubai insists that his voice is exactly the same as the one she heard. The man asks if she knows him. Meanwhile, back at the hospital, a policeman tells Jihun's mother that, thanks to Inubai's testimony, they caught the criminal right away. He hopes for Jihun's recovery and gives her Jihun's belongings, which include his phone and the engagement ring. She walks into the room, unlocks Jihun's phone, and sees his messages with Lee Jung-Oh. She quickly replies, telling Lee never to contact him again. When Lee Jung-Oh sees the message, she's surprised and thinks that something isn't right. Jihun's mother remembers Jihun saying he wanted to introduce her to someone. She looks at the picture of Lee Jung-Oh. She sees that Lee is a third-year student at the university, and that she's not from a normal family. She's the daughter of a single mother. Jihun's mother thinks about this and squeezes the picture, just as she hears a knock on the door. Jihun, it's me. Are you inside? Lee Jung-Oh calls out. Jihun's mother opens the door and asks if she's Lee Jung-Oh. Lee confirms that she is, and Jihun's mother invites her in. As Lee starts taking off her shoes, Jihun's mother thinks to herself that since Lee doesn't have a father, she immediately took off her shoes as soon as she was told to come in. Lee Jung-Oh says it's nice to meet Jihun's mother, but Jihun's mother cuts her off, asking what she was trying to do by trying to open someone's door. Lee Jung-Oh explains that Jihun gave her the passcode before. Jihun's mother tells her that the passwords have changed and asks if she should have given up when the code didn't work. Lee Jung-Oh apologizes and asks about Jihun, saying she's worried about him. Jihun's mother asks how much she disturbed him and wonders why he had to call her. She tells Lee Jung-Oh not to look for him anymore. Lee Jung-Oh addresses her as mother and pleads to speak with Jihun one last time. Jihun's mother snaps at her, asking who she thinks she is to call her mother. She blames Lee Jung-Oh for the trouble her son is in and advises her to leave while she's still being polite. She adds that Lee Jung-Oh should not disturb Jihun anymore. At the hospital, the doctor tells Jihun's mother that the operation went well. She asks him why Jihun hasn't woken up yet after 2 weeks. Jihun's mother goes to his room and reminds him that he promised he would never make her worry. Inubai calls her, and she's glad Inubai has arrived. Inubai asks if she has rested, and Jihun's mother says she's fine. Inubai tells her not to act like that because she might faint. She says Jihun's mother should at least get some nutrients injected and adds that she asked a doctor to arrange that for her. Jihun's mother says she's all right, and Inubai tells her she thinks Jihun will wake up today. She adds that he'll be looking for his mother when he wakes up and advises Jihun's mother to have a bright face when he does. Jihun's mother thinks to herself that Inubai is very perceptive. She has heard that Inubai is Judge Chai Seobok's daughter, and received a top-notch education from her family. She thinks Jihun should meet women like her. She thanks Inubai for her support and care. Inubai tells her to be careful on her way. Inubai walks into Jihun's room and comments on how handsome he looks. She wonders to herself if she should kiss him since he won't know. Just then, she is startled when someone opens the door. She turns around and sees Mr. Park Seung-gai. She tells him he surprised her. Mr. Park asks why she's so surprised and mentions that he's been seeing her a lot. He explains that he's a friend of Jihun's. Inubai asks why Mr. Park Seung-gai is there. He responds that he's there to see his friend, Jihun. He points out that there's something strange about the situation. The accident happened at 1:10 p.m., but the report came in around 1:30 p.m. The report was made by a man, but Inubai was a witness. He asks why she didn't report it immediately. Inubai explains that her phone ran out of battery, and she reported the accident as soon as her phone was charged. Mr. Park asks why she didn't go to the security office to report it if her phone was dead. She's about to answer when she notices Jihun showing signs of waking up. She quickly runs to him. Jihun, she calls out as she rushes to his side, and his friend also hurries over. Park Seung-gi asks if Jihun can see him or recognize him, but Jihun doesn't seem to remember. Park Seung introduces himself as Park Seung-gi and explains that they went to the same high school and university. He adds that he was Jihun's senior in the military, and that they stayed close even after Jihun was discharged. He asks Jihun if he's joking about not remembering anything. Jihun, confused, asks if Park Seung was in the military too. Jihun sees his mom and calls out to her. She asks if he's okay and if he can talk. She explains how worried she's been because of what happened. Jihun's mother remembers what the doctor said, that Jihun's memories from the past 3 years have disappeared, and his memory has gone back to when he was 23. She knows that his recovery should be the main focus, so they should try not to stress him out too much. Jihun's mother tells Anubai about his condition and adds that they are not sure if his memories will come back. Anubai responds by saying that this means Jihun won't remember her either. Jihun's mother asks her to explain. Anubai says that Jihun was very sweet to her and suggested becoming official once they returned to Korea, but now it looks like he won't remember that. Jihun's mother says that's perfectly all right, and that they can always start over. Anubai asks if she really believes that, and Jihun's mother says, of course, she does. Jihun's mother goes to his room and finds that he's awake. She asks if he has seen Anubai and explains that while he was unconscious, Anubai visited him every day. Jihun asks if Anubai is Uniop's sister. His mother says yes and adds that according to Anubai, Jihun was once interested in her. Anubai even said that Jihun suggested they date when they returned to Korea, but then he left to study abroad. Jihun is surprised and says that Uniop isn't really his type. His mother says maybe Anubai was just making small talk, but she's very kind and pretty, and she was nice to her too. Jihun starts holding his head, and his mother asks if something is wrong, if his head hurts again. Jihun says he's fine, but feels like he's forgetting something important. Meanwhile, Lee Jung-Oh goes back home and calls Jihun again. This time, he answers. She asks why he didn't contact her and explains how worried she has been. She wants to know where he is so she can meet him. Jihun says he was told that his mother would meet her instead of him and asks if everything didn't already end back there. Lee Jung-Oh is surprised by his response. Jihun tells her that his feelings are clear enough and asks her not to contact him again. He warns her that if she dares to reach out to him again, there will be consequences. Lee Jung-Oh asks what consequences, and Jihun sighs, saying he assumes she understands. He tells her to take care and hangs up. Lee Jung-Oh thinks to herself that it can't be real and must be a joke. She calls Jihun again, but gets his voicemail. Almost a year later, Lee Jung-Oh reflects on how much their child has grown. She thinks about how today is their child's birthday, and she has started calling her Mama. Lee Jung-Oh doesn't know where she learned it from, but sometimes she also says Dada. Their child has learned to run now and goes to daycare. She is always full of excitement, eats well, likes to touch her mom's face, and even sings sometimes. Lee Jung-Oh thinks about how next year Yena will start first grade. She is very pretty, has a lovely personality, and lots of friends. She's such a bright child. Even though Yena doesn't have a father, she hasn't waited for Jihun to contact her anymore. Today, Yena, who is 5 years old, asks her mom why there is a vending machine there. Yena asks again, so her mom calls her name and asks if she's just curious about the vending machine or if she wants something from it. Yena says she wants something. Her mom decides to let her have it just this once and gives her some pennies to use. Yena puts the coins into the machine, and it dispenses 2 balls. Yena excitedly shows her mom the balls. Her mom asks if she wanted them, and Yena says she did. The balls look like ghost stones, one is white and the other is black. Her mom tells her to keep them in her pocket, and not to play with them outside. Yena agrees and puts them away. Jung-Oh thinks to herself that she no longer waits for Jihun to contact her. As she reflects, she realizes that he never once told her he loved her. She's okay with it now because she has Yena with her. Yena is so excited to see her grandma. Her grandma is happy to see her and tells her to hurry up and eat, but Yena is busy playing with her food. Jung tells Yena to stop playing with her food. Yena apologizes, and her grandma starts feeding her. Jung says her mom should let Yena eat on her own. Lee's mom replies that if she doesn't feed Yena, she won't eat. Yena agrees and says that just watching her mom eat makes her feel full. Lee's grandma tells Jung to go in and get ready for work the next day. Jung asks what she needs to get ready for, and her mom explains that it's her first day at work after switching jobs. Jung says she needs to relax and get some rest. The next morning, Jung tells her mom that she's heading out. Her mom reminds her to take care, and not to forget her lunch. Jung says okay. Lee is on the phone with her senior and tells him she's on her way. Her senior says he's going to Gangnam. Lee asks if they are not going to Ivory Planning. He tells her that the company has been sold to Max Planning, and that the official announcement was made yesterday. He says things happened really quickly, and he's been moved to Max Planning right away without having to sign a new contract. He adds that it's a bit confusing, but he'll get used to it soon. He tells her that Max Planning is a better place for an assistant, and that he was going to move there eventually anyway. He tells her not to be scared. Lee thinks to herself that Max Planning is an advertising agency linked with the Sohyong Group. She had wanted to go to Ivory Planning, but now finds out she's going to Max Planning instead. She thinks it's actually a good thing since it's a larger company and closer to home. A man calls her name, Miss Jung-Oh. She answers, and he says it's nice to meet her. He introduces himself as Park Seung-gyu from Max Planning's Human Resources Department. She greets him back, and he introduces her to his boss as their new copywriter. The boss says it's nice to meet Lee and introduces herself as Song Miron, the leader of production team 2. She says she looks forward to working with Lee. Lee replies that she feels the same way. They both get in an elevator, and Miron comments that Lee must be a bit confused moving from Ivory Planning to here. Lee admits that she is a little confused. Miron explains that they don't have a copywriter on their team, which is why she made an urgent request for one. They arrive at the office, and Lee notices that it's very quiet. Miron calls everyone's attention. Miron introduces Lee to the new team as their new assistant copywriter. She first introduces Lee to the graphic designer, Song Ki-hoon, who says hello. Next, Miron introduces Lee to their team's PD deputy director, Park Young-kwang, who also welcomes her. Finally, Miron introduces Lee to Go Yoonju, the other graphic designer, who says it's nice to meet her. Lee responds that she looks forward to working with everyone. Miron then shows Lee her cubicle, and says that Song Ki-hoon will give her a tour of the company. He agrees to show her around. Miron whispers to Song Ki-hoon, asking what happened because the atmosphere was so tense earlier. He explains that director Jong must be around and asks if she didn't see him. Miron adds that there's no need to say hello separately and tells Lee to wait a moment. Miron tells Lee that the director is even scarier than the CEO. She says that the director has only been here a week, and that he's the chairman's son. Lee says she understands. Lee thinks to herself that the chairman's son must be from another world. She then spots him and realizes that it's someone she would never mistake for anyone else. It's Jung Jihun, the father of her child. She almost falls, but he catches her. Lee thinks to herself that she has imagined running into Jung Jihun once or twice. Every time she thought about it, She promised herself she wouldn't get angry if she saw him. But even after telling herself that hundreds of times, it's still hard for her. Miron introduces Lee to the director, saying she is the new copywriter for production team 2. The director says it's a pleasure to meet her, and introduces himself as Jung Jihun. Lee wonders if that's all he's going to say. Meanwhile, a mother is dragging her son to a class. The boy is screaming that he doesn't want to go. His mom tells him he'll get in big trouble if they go home. He replies that the class is boring. His mom reminds him that he said the show, Jung-Oh, on TV was entertaining, and that he was the one who wanted to take classes for it. She adds that she paid for everything and asks why he has changed his mind so quickly. His mom begs him to just go for 30 minutes, and if he stays and learns, she'll let him play video games for 30 minutes afterward. He asks if that means he gets to play for an hour. His mom agrees and tells him to hurry inside. He finally agrees to go in. As he enters the class, a girl tells him to stop crying and to set his hand still. She starts putting pebbles on his hand. The boy asks her what she's doing. She says that if he drops the pebbles, she'll flick his forehead. The girl introduces herself as Lee Yena and asks what his name is. He says his name is Park Do-bin. She asks if he goes to Oriole daycare. He wonders how she knew that. She says she saw it on his bag the previous day, and he thinks she has been watching him since then. Yena explains that the pebbles are black and white. He says he knows. She asks if he wants to be black or white. He says black, so she takes the white pebble and puts it on the board. She asks if he knows what he needs to do to earn her piece. He uses his black pieces to surround her white piece. Yena asks him how he knew how to play and tells him that if he knows how to play, then he shouldn't be crying. Park Do-bin thinks to himself that he has never met a woman like this in his whole 6 years of life. Meanwhile, his mom is waiting outside and thinks it's been 30 minutes and wonders if he's been crying the whole time. Then she sees him coming out and notices he's smiling. He runs up to his mom, and she asks how his class was and if he had fun. He says he had a lot of fun. His mom asks what he enjoyed the most. He then asks her if she ever experienced love at first sight with his dad. His mom asks if he even knows what that means. He says he does and thinks to himself that he felt it today. He tells his mom that from now on, he will try his best in Go class. Jung Jihun is in his office and wonders why the new copywriter from the second production team is bothering him so much. She makes him feel so strange and uncomfortable. Miron walks into his office and hands him a list of PT applicants. He asks if she had to get a physical exam before joining the company. She says that she must have, since it's a requirement. He comments that she looked like she was about to collapse and wonders if something is wrong with her health. Miron laughs and says it might be because she's nervous and adds that he is quite a striking figure. He asks if he looks like he's joking, and she stops laughing. He then tells her to bring Lee Jung-Oh to his office right away. Mr. Song Ki-hoon shows Lee how to use the company's shared folder. He explains that it's easier to just drag her work into the folder. Lee mentions that she used cloud storage at her old job and asks if he's not worried about security. He tells her that they use folder passwords for confidential files, and she agrees and thanks him for his help. He says he's shared everything he knows, and while they are still talking, Miron calls Lee and says that the director wants to see her. Miron suggests that they should go together. Lee says she can go alone, but Miron insists it's okay and that she'll accompany her. She warns Lee that it might get intense. Lee wonders why he called her, thinking he might act like they are strangers or ask her to resign. When they reach the director's office, Miron introduces Lee, saying she has brought assistant Lee Jung-Oh. Jung Jihun wakes up and notices Lee Jung-Oh. He asks if she's okay, and she says she's fine. He mentions that she seemed uncomfortable when they met and adds that he knows she applied to Ivory Planning, but ended up at Max Planning instead. He asks if she's disappointed that it's not the company she originally wanted, but notes that Mac's planning is better in every way. Lee wonders why he's asking all these questions. He then asks if she can do her job well. She says yes, and he responds that he expected a better answer since she's a copywriter. She explains that she's different when she's working but promises to work hard. He tells her that he'll be keeping an eye on her work. Later that evening, Park Seung-gyo asks Jung Jihun if he's going home. Jung tells him to act normal. Park admits that he's not used to it and feels out of his depth. Jung asks if he should move Park to the annex so he can adjust better. Park wonders if Jung is serious and says he shouldn't joke like that because he always seems serious. Jung asks if he's scary when he says that. Park says it is scary. Jung then asks if he himself is scary. Park asks if something's wrong. Jung mentions there's a new employee. Park knows and calls her name. He says she's a copywriter and asks what's wrong with her. Jung explains that her face goes pale whenever she sees him. Park asks if he thinks just one or two people have that reaction. He thinks to himself that Jung noticed her reaction, and then asks Jung if Jung-Oh is pretty. He then asks what Jung is doing later, and invites him to his house. Jung asks why he would go there. Park says it's Jung's mother who asked him to invite Jung. He adds that Jung needs to show he has a harmonious family so they can get married quickly. Jung asks why Park cares about that and tells him to just pretend to listen to his mother. Park wonders how he could pretend. Jung says he's leaving first. Jung Jihun gets home and thinks about his life. He feels like he's living a life where he pretends, where he doesn't feel bad at all about losing 3 years of memories. He's living a life where he has to keep everything the same quietly, without really trying hard. He thinks his life is boring. When he gets home, he starts thinking about women with long hair and wonders if it's because of her name. He keeps thinking about her name until he starts imagining her kissing him. He snaps out of it and tells himself that he's going crazy. If you're eager for the next chapter, drop a comment expressing your interest in a part 2. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell to stay updated. Until next time, ciao.